sailed from Riscalillo to a bay called Bahia Angel, and it's a tranquil and picturesque little village with about 3,000 inhabitants. In the 19th century, it used to be a very important port to ship out coffee from the state of Chiapas, but nowadays it thrives on fishing and mostly tourism. And I can pretty much see why, because it's a really nice little spot. Despite the bay's size, it's a little bit tricky to anchor here because it's crowded with mooring fields, and then there's a massive sunk ship just right in the middle of the bay. And when I came into the bay, there was another boat anchored here that had a stern anchor out, so it took out a lot of room. But I really like the bay, so I did want to make it happen. So I squeezed in between tons of moorings and some scary rocks. And although I did set an anchor alarm, I did spend the first 2 nights in the cockpit, checking everything and being woken up by the water madly rushing over those ominous rocks, like maybe a couple of meters just from my stern. But hey, that's the price you pay for anchoring in a picturesque bay, right? It's a little bit terrifying, but you can enjoy the scenery. Aside from making sure that my floating home doesn't crash into those nearby rocks, I've also been prepping Karl for my next voyage, which is going to be a 200 nautical mile solo sail to Acapulco. I have been motoring quite a bunch lately. Coming up this whole coast was a lot of motoring, actually. And I will rely quite a bit more on my engine to go further up north. So I want to make sure everything is fine. I'm checking my liquids, and I was a little low on transmission fluid because I do have a leak on my rear seal here. I've had this for a while. I've already changed the seal on the rear transmission end, but it didn't do the trick. And I talked about a marine, and they said this can sometimes happen if the engine is mounted on an angle, that you'll have this leak. It's not the end of the world. I'm just monitoring it, and it was getting a little low, so I was filling some up. And I'm also a little on the low side on my main engine oil. I'm also coming up to the time frame that I have to do an oil change soonish. But for now, I'm just going to fill up a tiny little bit of oil, and then I'm going to do another fuel filter change and clean out my Reinke again, because there is some stuff going on. I'm always highly afraid that I'm going to put the wrong liquid into the wrong compartment, so I very much appreciate that this lid says oil. I've been doing some engine checks, and apart from that, I've also been debating whether I need some more fuel. The next gas station is quite a bit away. You have to take a cab to get there. And I do have a fair amount of diesel in the tank. And I did probably for an hour, I did all these calculations for different scenarios and how much I would have to motor. What happens if I, have to fight currents, if I need to amp up the RPMs a little bit and I'll be consuming more fuel. And I was going forth and back. And I was picturing the situation of me being out there and trying to get somewhere and then trying to, make landfall somewhere and then not having enough fuel. So in the end, I was like, I think my calculations came to the point that I was kind of safe with what I had. Ish. But just for peace of mind, I took 4 jerry cans and I took them to shore with my kayak and the dog. Went to the next gas station, filled them up, and then kayaked them back to the boat. Yeah, it's a little overkill probably, but I do feel a lot more calm having those jerry cans on deck. And doing stuff like that, although it's a little bit tedious, it's usually a really great way to connect with the locals because they see you doing these things and they're like, what's going on? And then, you start talking and you get into these conversations about, living on a sailboat, and they tell you what their lives is about. And I love that way of connecting with the people. So I think it was worthwhile. apart from playing in my engine room and getting some extra fuel that I probably won't need, I've also been exploring the vicinity with Boga. We took a little hike to a beautiful lighthouse, and I've been enjoying some freshly squeezed lemonade on shore, always with an eye on Karl's anchor situation. And I've also been witnessing this slightly crazy game that the locals were playing on the beach. It was some kind of festival that was going on, and they had a bunch of bags with toys or goodies hung up on the top of a pretty high pole, and then they were building this human pyramid, people forming a circle around the pole and then stepping on each other's shoulders, and then they were going higher and higher and higher, and then a little kid would finally climb to the top and try and reach up to the bags, and whatever they pulled down was theirs to keep. They were having a lot of fun. My German mind was looking at it and thinking, oh, wow, what if all of this crashes and then they crash on top of each other, and you know, what could happen? Anyways, I was telling myself they're having fun and most likely nothing is going to happen and everything is going to be fine. But it did test my nerves a little bit, I have to admit. I wish I could have stayed longer in this little place because I really did enjoy the vibe. But it's time to get ready for my next leg, and everything is more or less prepped. All that's left to do is cook a lovely stew for the passage, because I do love to prep some food when I do solo sailing trips that are longer than a day. And then it's time to pick up anchor tomorrow morning. I have to say that I feel weirdly calm. I'm not used to feeling that calm before a 2-night passage. I don't know what's going on. I guess it's a good sign, right? But more about that next time.